I think I'm struck by, obviously not just your achievement with Weeds, which is huge, but what we were talking about before, that you've written 17 pilots, that you've been fired off of series, which we might want to hear that story, but that
many.
in other words,
How do you not get discouraged? I was fired recently, and by recently, 3 years ago, and I think I'm still getting over it. Seriously.
Yeah, I don't know if you call what happened to me fired, but I guess you could call it fired. I was fired off my own screenplay.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm not talking about So-Called Life. No, I'm talking about, no, that wasn't being fired.
No, you were screwed.
That was just
were screwed.
That was just an ending. But it's hard when you're replaced off when you're asked off your own work. And I think that word discouragement, not to say what's in people's minds, but I think it's important to talk to that, and if there's a way you can speak to that, and just what you personally do. Like, for instance, when you were fired those times, obviously as a human, you have to get down at some point.
Oh yeah.
But where does resilience for you come from? Is it just that is it linked to your mom writer, your dad writer? Is it just kind of, this is what I know?
At one point when I was talking about doing this, she said, women aren't as funny as men.
She said women aren't as funny as men?
My mother told me this, yes. And that, in a comedy room, yes. And you don't even try to be in a comedy room, because it's just women have a different sense of humor.
Yeah, this is, It's
well, the moms and their need to help us by making sure that we're not hurt.
But men think that. Your mom was just saying what all the men think anyway. And occasionally Christopher Hitchens writes about it.
The what?
Christopher Hitchens wrote that article, Why Women Aren't Funny.
Right.
Well, since we're there, why don't we talk about being a woman in a male comedy room?
It's a mixed bag. I had an experience when I was younger and had firmer breasts where a higher ranking writer pushed me up against the wall and grabbed my tit, and he's like, "Fuck me, or you can't go in the writer's room." I was like, at a certain point, okay, let's fuck right here. It's like, what are you gonna say?
What did you say?
I don't even remember. I just remember him
doing that,
pinning me to the wall by my tit. It's just, but
was this before the days of quote unquote sexual harassment, or was this?
Yeah, but before, after.
He was a pioneer.
Look, sexual harassment. That's the nature of this job, and if you can't take it, you shouldn't be in it. And if you try to address it, you'll never work, and nor should you, because it's just like it's a certain amount of hazing. I think there's a lot of ways to approach being the girl in the writer's room.
Well, how did you?
Sometimes I would try to outdo.
Is it that thing you were talking about before about you just have to be better?
Yeah, you top them. If they are shocking, you can be more shocking. If they're disgusting, you can be more disgusting. And that was sort of my way. But also, I like funny guys. I liked being in the boys' club to a certain extent. I liked being, the anybody's in the gang, and
right.
And it was fun for me in a lot of ways. It's weird when you have a crush on someone on the staff and you're completely desexed because you're the chick writer, or they attack everything about you and make you feel vulnerable, or whatever it is. But that's the game, and if you're in it to do the job and be part of the group, you've got to find your place in that pecking order and what you're good at.
You don't really fit in if they're not mercilessly picking on you, teasing you.
Yeah. But if they know they've gotten to you, then you're done.
No, you can't. No crying in baseball. No crying. Although at one point I was running a show And going into this season, I thought, I have an idea of the kind of woman showrunner I want to be. No crying, keep your cool, and of course, within 2 weeks, I'm crying, and my staff is comforting me, and it was literally like
I've never done a job where I didn't cry in front of people.
At one point, I went into a bathroom. And if there had been a window there, I would have just gone right out and kept going.
But that speaks to, we sort of skipped over the discouragement question.
Oh, yeah. When I've been fired a lot, and it is discouraging. But
why can you talk about why you would have been fired? If you don't mind.
Sometimes it's just personality. It really is. When a room is being put together, you're casting. The showrunner's casting a room, and you want to make sure your cast meshes and works well together. And you can be the most brilliant writer in the world, but if your personality is not fitting in with that room, you don't belong there. And there were times where just it wasn't a good fit, or I was a threat for some reason, or I talked too much, or whatever it was, or I had a different, I'm not great with the pecking order, and I don't run my room with a pecking order. It's best idea wins, but a lot of people are kind of military about their rooms, and I would push on things that I believed in, and I'd fight back because I was sort of trained to.
You saw that as
I
your
thought
job.
that's why I was there.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I always thought that's what I was being paid for.
And sometimes you're not. And, I'm not the best team player. But, I started writing pilots early on because I saw that I'm not good in the ranks. I want to service the showrunner's vision, but I want to enhance it with my own. And that's not always what's required. And I learned quickly that if I really wanted to have longevity in this business, I had to sort of generate my own stuff where I could have a little more control over it, or work with people who wanted to collaborate and wanted to be open. And it's about finding those matches. Like I did 3 or 4 years with Tracy Ullman, which was amazing because first of all, she delivers everything you give her, and everyone was good, and no one was threatened by anyone else's talent, and you got to do your thing, and it was appreciated.
Right.
And
that was a good fit for you.
It was a great fit for me.
But it's also, interestingly, a show that isn't like an ongoing series where you're putting your voice into someone else's, outline. You're coming up with fresh material every week where you can really bring your own creativity to it, isn't that?
Yeah, but you're putting your voice on her characters, or your characters that you've created for her.
Right.
And like Peter Tolan, like that was a great thing. He was great to work for because he liked. You want to work for someone who likes good writing and appreciates it, and is excited by it, and not threatened by it.
Right.
And there are so many mediocre people in higher positions who don't want you to be better, or not to say I was always better, but sometimes I was.
Right. And also you were, if I dare say, you were young when you were better. You started off young, and you were, and that can be threatening for the older person.
Yeah.
If they're not, let's say, super secure or feeling their own self. This is making me think so much of being in my 20s and, like before you get successful, in quotes, or I guess maybe even without quotes, if before you get successful, at least for me, it was this feeling of like everything that happened seemed to have a meaning to me, that I would assign it. In other words, I would go, okay, that I didn't get that job, and that means like something terrible about me, basically, or that is a sign, But luckily, when I'm saying it, even this to you, I still, for some reason, didn't get that discouraged. Like right. I would really feel terrible, but I still didn't give up, which I think is so good.
That fuck you, and it's also like there's this like biblical parable, or I think it's the Talmud or something, where everyone's supposed to walk around with two pieces of paper in their one in each pocket, and one says, you know, the world is created just for me, and the other says, I am but dust and ashes. And like you spend your life pulling out one or the other. You know, I'm completely insecure and riddled with self-doubt, and I have a huge chip on my shoulder, and I'm completely arrogant, and it's like la 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 la, and I spend my life on that seesaw, and I think that helps. In between.
But I think it's also the writer thing. I mean, I don't really, one of the things that's so interesting, because Winnie and I have really only asked writers to come here whose work we love and who we admire as writers, and yet the common thing is that some version of what you just said. And, you know, so at some point you either go, well, only those people become writers, or maybe that's why people become writers or something, because, I'm just so sick of it, you know? And you feel like when you're having a good, you know, you're on a good trajectory, you feel like, well, now I've got this writing thing licked. Well, you know, you've had those days, right?
Yeah, I had one
finally
today.
figured it
Like,
out.
I accidentally started to get ideas, and it was like, oh, you know, it's almost like you're, not that I ever there, but I mean, it's almost like you're in Las Vegas, and suddenly, you know, you made like a jackpot happen, and you go, how did I do that? Like, I don't know, and how will I ever do that again? And you know, just start to get, so something starts to flow. So all you can really do is not assign too much self-hatred blame when it's not happening, but just remember that actually most artistic experiences are that you do spend a lot of time with it not happening, and it actually means nothing about you. And the other thing I was going to say is that then when you finally do end up with people who appreciate what you do, who are like into it, you were the same person the whole time. You didn't suddenly become talented. It's like you were always that person, whoever you are, with whatever amount of talent you have. It's just that suddenly you're around people who actually dig what you're doing, so it feels like you suddenly got talented. But it's like you were always that.
Right. No, and it's also like when you've been working your ass off and you get an award, and all of a sudden everyone's sending you things. It's like nothing changed except some guy over there said, oh, let's give her a prize or whatever. It's almost insulting. It's almost like, well, it shouldn't mean anything.
Well, and it doesn't. I mean, the truth is that this was going to be my little, I don't know if it's a fuck you story, but my little fuck you story was that, you know, you've heard this a zillion times, but I wrote this musical when I was younger, when I was in my late 20s, and by the time I guess I was about 32, it got produced off Broadway, and it was kind of savaged by the New York press. I mean, it got like really bad reviews, like not kidding.
Just this is the writer's mind. Name one of the headlines.
It's a bird, it's a plane, it's a bomb.
There you go. Writers never forget the sucky.
It got really bad reviews. I mean, really bad. And that was a turning point. That was like one of the best things that's ever happened. No, it wasn't about Superman, but it was a reference to Superman. But it was a turning point in my life, and it opened up my life into a great new era, because I was 32. I'd had a baby, so she was like, she was a baby. But I remember strolling around with her in a stroller Upper Broadway where I lived. Literally, my thoughts were, okay, am I going to take the opinions of this group of men that I've never met and have them decide my fate? It almost seems like I'm tempted to do that. Or if I don't do that, that means I have to make a pledge to myself that I am writing that the fact that I'm going to write has nothing to do with what anybody thinks of my writing, and has nothing to do with anybody's opinion. And a further pledge that I'm not writing to get a good review.
Right.
Because the second I was just so blown away. I had been so devastated by the reviews, but the bigger devastation was, is this my fate? That all I'm doing is scratching along like a mouse, trying to get one of those guys to say that I was good? Because if that was my life, I didn't even want to be a writer.
Yeah.
So I had to like rethink and reassess my entire life. And that was the beginning of me, not that I haven't, believe me, gone backwards, because that's all we kind of do as humans, I think. But I've never again been able to seriously go, invest in a good review.
Right.
It's
Because if you invest in the good, you have to invest in the
yeah. So it just became all about me and what I wanted to actually
I think it's working.
say, what I wanted to say, which became the subject of my thoughts. Like,
Right.
what do
And
I want to say?
But I mean, taking that down to just a show level, if you're writing to fulfill notes or fulfill the wishes of the network or the studio, you're screwed. It's got to be for you, and entertaining for you and interesting to you. And if things people are telling you to do undermine what you know and feel is good, you're not going to have a good product in the end. And I think, like, in a way, like, if you're writing it for other people and not being true to your
No, it's the
vision,
same exact thing. It's a big one.
yeah. But you have to be brave enough to say, I'll think about that, and then not do it.
So is that your technique?
Lately, I mean, I was more balls out on weeds, because it was just like, you're not paying me enough to tell me what to do, kind of thing. It was just like,
Was that your inner thought? I mean, yeah.
yeah, a kind of, yeah. And it was like, this is my shot, and this is, and I think I know better here. And I've hired all these people around me who know the show better than you do, who are with me every day, whose opinions I value more. And not that an outside opinion isn't helpful sometimes, but I
Right.
don't trust yours.
So how did you handle that? I mean, people, the network would call you with notes and.
It got ugly. It got ugly for a while. In fact, I don't know.
Can we have some details?
I don't know if he was drunk or careless, or I don't know what the story was. But at one point, Bob Greenblatt CC'd me on an email saying he was going to fire me.
Oh, wow.
Oh, so it's like that could have been just an accident.
Maybe.
Or maybe he wanted to scare you.
Yeah. And
So what did the emails? Who was he
it
sending
was like,
it to?
we may have to replace the showrunner and blah, blah, blah. And I wrote back, I was like, good luck.
Was
You
this?
know,
I'm just
so-
curious. Was this early?
Yeah. It was when I was fighting with Mary Louise a lot.
Right.
And I kept saying, get out of the middle.
Right.
Get out of the middle. And also, he was sending dumb notes. And what I would do is I'd write these really long, thoughtful emails about why his note was bad and I wasn't going to take it. And there were very cogent arguments that I'd spent a lot of time. And
You infuriated him.
it made him really mad, to
Right.
the point where I finally got like this clipped response, fine, do what you want. And that was the best thing that could have ever happened.
yeah, he's pissed.
And
But the point is,
no, but he's still mad at us, and he's still like, because he couldn't piss in the corners. He hates. On some level, it's great, but on another
Just
level,
shoot
he's really
me.
mad
Just
that
shoot
like
me.
we're successful. I mean, he's very on board now, and he's really sort of accepted that we know what we're doing, and if he lays off,
because he's
it's
had
good.
to.
Yeah, but ooh,
Well, the success sort of speaks for itself. I mean, you can't argue with that level of.
yeah.
Like-
and I'm not proud that like I'd like to have made friends and blah blah blah, but
The next time.
he was really not supportive in the beginning and made it really clear, and so I sort of wrote him off, which gave me freedom to do what I
Well, it
wanted.
sounds like it was all about freedom, but I admire that, because I'll go between the two poles of I will want to be friends with them and mistake a business relationship for a friendship, which is very painful, or I will just be aggressive. I mean, I'm really trying to, sometimes I can handle these things really well, and Winnie, you look
I'm just blown away by both of you, because I'm still back in the kindergarten of I get scared that people are going to get mad at me. I mean,
he was mad at me. I mean,
it's really hard
look,
for
we're
me
still
to
not
deal with
close
that.
friends, but I've also learned that if I really want to get something across, sometimes I'll put one of the guys on the phone. He's more comfortable talking to them, and it's like,
Well,
you
that's
talk to 'em.
smart. It's
And,
like
yeah.
that's you going.
Yeah.
Let me be smart here.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there are millions of times I've shot myself in the foot and you know, blown. I'm not political at all, and it's fucked me many ways. Fortunately, you know, I could back it up on this one, and that was good.
I know and
Yeah.
believe you that you're not Nancy, but I'm listening to this, looking at this kind of fearless woman. Maybe you don't see it as fearless, but you're very clear, and it really comes across as fearless in surrounded by all these guys who are pretty ruthless guys.
Well, I have some women. I have women too on the staff. It's not all guys, but my core was a bunch of guys.
Can we just? I'm going to go to a question in a minute, but I did want to ask about Doug and Andy.
Yeah.
I mean, and I don't mean to make them into a couple, but they have so many hilarious scenes together.
Yeah.
And all along, were you planning to bring Andy in, and you just couldn't fit him into the
Yes,
pilot?
yes.
And did you have
Andy-
Justin Kirk or?
No. Okay, Andy was a character I totally knew I wanted and had conceived early on, and was loosely based on one of my brothers, although I'll never say
You'll
that.
never really admit to it.
And in all the wonderful ways too. And so he was always, I had always intended to do Andy, and then it came time to I finally got the episode where it was like, here comes Uncle Andy, and you know, you get the usual list of people, and then you get the people, and everyone says no, and then you audition. And it was really one of those things where, like, we'd seen everyone, and it was the last audition of the day, and the sun had gone down, and Justin Kirk walked in, and was nothing like I'd envisioned, and took the part. And
It's thrilling. It's
it
thrilling.
was thrilling. It was completely unexpected. And to top it off, he's just the most excellent person. He's great to be with. He's great to hang out with. And you write him stuff, and he makes it sing, and he turns it in ways you hadn't thought of. And he's just delicious.
You had him coming karmically, I have to tell you.
Oh, my gosh.
Right.
But again, you wrote a really specific part, even though he wasn't
Yes.
what you saw. But also, I mean, you could just see all the ways that could have gone horribly wrong if
Yes.
somebody's like playing into the ne'er-do-well. And here's this guy who's adorable, charismatic, and seems well-meaning.
Yes.
Even though
Right.
he's the horrible fuck-up.
Right. Right.
And he's just utterly adorable. Like,
Yeah.
you can't get mad at him.
That's an awesome character.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And can you talk
I have
about-
great love for
And can you talk about Kevin Nealon, too?
Kevin Nealon was supposed to be a oneer. It was a guest role in the pilot. It was not planned as a regular character, and from that first little monologue he gave, you know, it was just man and part were made for each other, and everyone saw it, and it was just like, you have to make him a regular, and it was like, make a deal. We'll
Well,
do
he's,
that.
I mean, he's such a great character.
Yeah.
So many, I mean, this was just a little moment, and if I get this wrong, and it was Andy and not Doug, I apologize, but there's a scene in the grow house that's in the Armenian neighborhood where the guys are getting stoned, and in the background, Doug is just stepping on bubble wrap.
Yes, yes.
There's no comment, there's no
No.
plot.
Yeah.
But I mean, the
No,
character.
but also like talk about life imitating art. You know, I went through a little eBay phase, and things would come and wrap, and we'd lay it out on strips on the floor, and my kids would just run back and forth, and we had just had a whole night of them jogging on bubble wrap all night, and it was like, this would be good. This would be really good.
Well,
for
that's
Doug.
one of the fun things to me. I mean, again, just that's one of my favorite things about actually being on the air is when you're in that mode, everything, so many things, you could just go, I'll take that, I'll take that, I'll take that person, I'll throw that in. It's like things are just passing through your periphery, and you grab them, and they're perfect.
It's
and they
like
fit.
the details. The details are informed by what's going on every day.
Oh, absolutely.
Because you don't have time to think of another one.
Right.
So
and
you
it's there.
throw in the thing that's right there, but it has a weird perfection.
Right. On the other side of the coin, it's you experience something in your life, and you want to find a place for it in the show.
Right.
You know, you want to get a line in, or you want to.
Do you have ones like that in the pilot, or?
Um,
Well, I felt that Passion of the Christ.
Yeah,
one.
that was
was I
certainly-
just felt like the need to express.
Yes. I was having a lot of feelings about that.
But what about that bear? I mean, the bear show and the way those boys were about the bear, and that had a feeling to me of just something that meant something to you.
You know, it was a time where we were exploring the hinterlands of cable, and you find just the most amazing shows on there. And
right.
We've been watching a hunting show, but it wasn't.
It wasn't about a bear.
It wasn't about a bear. But there was some bear thing going on in my life. I don't even remember.
But did you
right
take
now.
it and make it be about a bear because you knew you had that pink teddy bear that was going to be the teddy cam? I mean, did you know that
it all coalesced? I don't remember exactly how.
Because that's one of those eureka moments where you can take the bear and you take the bear and it's all about a bear.
Right.
I mean, that's a great feeling.
Right.
Kind of a
absolutely
tie together. Oh, this works.
Yeah.
This all works.
But I also find that sometimes you'll start something and it won't reveal itself as connected until you're really in the piece, or almost until you finish the piece. Like I do believe there's some sort of divine intervention in these things that make the elements come together, and it's like you threw it in there and you didn't realize that it would click in.
Well, that's happened to me 8 zillion times.
Yeah.
Well, and that's one of the scary parts too. Is it's all irrational. You're creating something from nothing, but there's constantly these things that seem extra irrational, like the detail of the boys are watching this show about the bear, and it's a good idea because they can connect over it and all of that, but it's that scariness of like, I'm going to stick with this weird detail and I don't know why.
Totally.
And then it really winds up being this
needed
thing.
This thing you needed because it brings everything. I mean, I have had so many fears where, it's one fear, but I've had it a zillion times, where it's like somebody like a producer or somebody like that is saying to me, why does it have to be that? Why is it that? Why is it that? And I don't have a good answer yet. But I know that I don't really know anything except that I'm afraid that if I lose that, I may be losing something that because a lot of times I don't have a good answer until later.
Right. Right. It comes out in the process. It comes out on the page. It comes out in something your characters are saying. It reveals itself.
I'm sorry. I really
We'll
want to
take
go to more questions. Yes. Miss Jody. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Here, it's coming.
Yeah.
It's coming. Is it on? Flip it. Switch it.
No. Can somebody help her? Or it is?
Hello.
Oh, all right.
I actually have a couple, but I'll ask one, and if it goes quickly, maybe I'll get a chance to go.
Okay.
Actually, it's for all three of you. You're all writers. I'm wondering if you had like a fantasy project that you'd really like to do later, maybe not even in the same genre that you're so accomplished in already, but if you have fantasies of writing a great novel or a film or something that you haven't yet had a chance to really grab.
Well, I'm
She
writing.
looks tired just thinking about it.
I'm writing. I think she's writing her fantasy project.
Well, no, there is actually a show that I've been trying to sell that no one will buy.
and is that the HBO one that you were talking about?
Yeah.
That you developed for HBO?
No. That's another script that's done. This is still nascent, but I want to do a dark comedy set in an abortion clinic.
Oh yeah, I mean seriously, that's the final
And
frontier.
It is, but it's also like my best friend who I ran to when I had to write spec scripts is a family practice doctor, and then on the weekend she does abortions, and the stories
I'm not
are
surprised
great.
I don't want to buy it. A friend of mine and I, literally for a joke, she got so pissed off that when Miranda was pregnant on Sex and the City, that even on Sex and the City, nobody would have an abortion. And it's not like we're pro-abortion, but like women always have to have miscarriages. It's a world where nobody gets an
TV.
abortion. So this is really horrible, but I'm going to say it anyway. Oh no, I'm not going to.
Just say it. No, you've already.
Thank you.
Meryl and I, for a joke, said that the cold open should be who the baby would be if it was born. Isn't that horrible? That's really genuinely horrible. Like in 6 Feet Under, it was always the death. Never mind. I told you I really shouldn't have said it. Everyone. Brought a
it's okay,
pall
it's
over the room.
okay,
But that
it's
sounds
okay.
very pro-life propaganda, unless it's like,
No.
oh, is it like the crime effect of
Yeah, it would just be
the
whatever.
tipping point?
It could be the tipping point. It was like, in the Woody Allen movie, what everybody turned out to be. It wasn't.
Right.
Abortion is the biggest taboo in Hollywood.
The BBC wouldn't touch
think.
it. Sue Nagle
Oh,
just
not
sort
just
of,
in Hollywood.
No,
then.
they wouldn't touch it in England. Sue Nagle was just like, I'll think of it. It's just like, yeah, you do that, it's dead. But I don't know. Maybe I'll spec it. I don't know. It's tricky. It's tricky, and
Well,
also
Maybe
Yeah.
it could be an independent movie.
yeah.
I know
But
everybody says that about everything, but maybe it could be.
I mean, Citizen Ruth kind of did a job on that as an independent
What?
movie.
Citizen Ruth, yeah.
I love being able to continue a story. I mean, I'd like to write a screenplay just because it's a challenge and it's something that appears lucrative and less time consuming.
Appearances can be deceiving.
Yeah, I know.
But you can't get into the depth that you can get into in a series. It's really like a novella versus a nice juicy long novel.
Well, I also think the best writing in media right now is being done on TV. I think
Without question.
movies suck right now, and it's and I don't know. I think the best stuff is on TV.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Well, I would watch it. Let me put it this way. Just to piss people off, just to get people awake, just to wake people up and go, let's get upset about this one way or the other. No matter how you feel, that's definitely a hot button topic. And I would admire you if you get that done.
I mean, the whole notion of culture war in general, I think, is a great.
Yeah, I think it's hard not to want to depict things that aren't often depicted, and want to just write things that aren't often shown, because it starts to feel like your job. It starts to feel like, let me just look for my, that'll be like my version of that, so it may not look like anybody else's, but it's my version of, in other words, it's not so much a fantasy job as, because I don't have that illusion anymore that anything's going to be a fantasy, because it's all just going to be a nightmare, because that's what it feels like when I'm trying to do it. So it's not a fantasy. It's more like, what do I want to see that I'm not getting to see, and what do I want to talk about that I'm not getting to talk about, that I'm not feeling like
It's
people
being
are
addressed.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I think about. Question?
Yes.
Oh wait, there's
Is there one over?
Yeah, I have a question. Other than creative freedom that you have when writing for premium cable channel, what obstacles do you face as opposed to like network television in creating and developing a show for network television?
Budget and exposure. Your audience is limited by subscribers. I mean, now with DVDs, with downloading, with both legal and illegal, with the ripping, you have more exposure, but you're limited. Your audience is limited. You don't get that mass appeal that like a Grey's Anatomy, whatever. And then budget. We are on a 5-day schedule. Everyone's working too much. There's never enough money. We're cutting things we love for budget.
You have to be very cognizant of using your sets carefully and
Sets
economically.
Yes, and outside.
And not
play-
too many extras, I would imagine.
Right. In fact, I have a wonderful writer who needs to put her producer hat on more, because she writes these great scenes with these outside characters, and it's just like, we can't afford it. That's $2,000 a pop. But I mean, sometimes it works in your favor, like with our music. The motto at Weeds is, if you've heard it, we can't afford it. So.
But that's so funny, because
Yeah.
we used to have that same thing on every network show I've ever worked on.
Yeah.
And my whole way of being trained on network was my biggest illusion that was dashed when I started working in network television was I used to think that people just wrote whatever they wanted, and they just shot whatever they wanted, and
No,
then
that's
I
HBO.
and then and then I went to TV, and it was like, we can't afford that. We can't afford that many extras. We can't afford that set. We can't afford. And I realized that there was an art to telling your story within
Economy.
within an economic. And by the way,
And it makes you scrappy.
it makes you scrappy and also makes you better because necessity is the mother of invention. I mean, you have to find creative things that you could do in that set that already exists with those people you already paid for. And if you can't do that, why are you there, basically?
But on the other side of the coin, you do reach a point where like your crew's been working 18 hours and you have to get that last shot, and you need a hiatus week just to regroup, and
People are fried.
and people are fried, and it's just not fair because they're working so hard, and it's a double-edged sword.
And you still, 4 seasons in, am I mistaken, or is Weeds the top-rated show on Showtime?
I think it is. They
So even in the 4th
don't like to tell us.
season,
They don't like to tell you.
well, that's what I read. But in the 4th season, you would think that they would give you 5.5 days or something.
You would think, but also it's not Showtime. Lionsgate's paying for it, which very
not
cheap.
getting respect there.
No, but there's good and bad about Lionsgate. The good news is they're a bank, and the bad news is they're a bank. So they're not going to interfere creatively unless it costs money.
So that's probably part of the equation of why you were able not to take anything away from your chutzpah and
No.
savvy,
Right.
but your and righteous indignation about the networks, but you were landed at a studio that really didn't interfere.
They didn't interfere. They didn't have a TV department. They didn't know. Really, we got lucky because
That is lucky.
they didn't know what they were doing. And subsequent shows have been much more micromanaged, both on Showtime and Lionsgate. But we were really the first one to hit for both of them. So we got to kind of forge our own path. And we realized, everyone working there, how lucky we were.
Right.
To have sort of slipped under the radar and been able to get our way without that much interference. We know it was remarkable.
Right. That's we've talked about this so many times this year and in subsequent years, but you just have to get sometimes a little bit of fate. You have to have fate. Timing has to somehow.
Luck, mazel.
Exactly. Yeah. Great.
Oh, yes.
Hi, your process, like, you wrote like 17 million pilots. Okay, so let's say you get this idea about a suburban pot mom or an abortion clinic. Okay, you're, besides all of the creative marinating one does, where do you approach it from? Do you just start writing down notes? Do you like outline some of it? Do you do a little of each? How do you start? After you've done your marinating, when you're actually got yourself sitting down and trying to write something, what is your particular process to create?
I find for every project I'm doing, it's different. Like, the first thing I wrote for Weeds was I reprinted the lyrics to little boxes and typed them out. There are other things I've started where I've just had a scene in mind and I've written that scene and it's like, well, where does that go next? Characters. I will usually start with an idea of who the characters are, but often on the page they'll really introduce themselves more. I can't say that there's a single process or a single routine that happens. It's always different. The hardest part is just getting my ass in a chair or on the bed and typing and not switching over to the internet or playing word games.
That's true for me. Is that true for you?
What?
That's just still the hardest part of just.
Well, yeah, it is. It is. And I really resist it. And then when I do it, it's like almost like the image is like a kid having a tantrum. You see these people, they got to pick up the kid and the kid is kicking and screaming and they take him and they, I don't know, put him in the car or stop screaming in the grocery store or something. That's what I feel like. And every so often I can almost like calm down. You just, you're going to sit there today. You're going to sit there. And I've, been struggling with something that I've been rewriting. And yesterday and today I was able to sit there today for 3 hours, yesterday for 2 hours. And I'm really remembering that I really never want to do it. Even once I'm doing it, every day it's like a choice to be stronger than the resistance to doing it.
Oh, even I find like I'll be singing on a scene, and I'll fucking stop and go over and play a game and like stop myself from the flow because I'm so ADD with.
Well, that's really true of me. And I mean, to me, it has to do with, there's a little ADD-ness about it. But to me, I actually have come to believe that I scare myself. It's like I get excited, and I'm a little scared by that.
That's interesting.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like I am afraid to like literally be that and get that involved, and then then there's that thing that we're all describing, which is that we have that it's resistance. I mean, that is the definition of resistance. And the good news about resistance is that you really can't talk to anybody who makes their life by creating stuff that doesn't like experience this shit. I mean, they're really.
The War of Art is a great, great, great book. It was on the book list about resistance.
About working with your own mind.
Yeah, it's a great.
Yeah, that he's holding.
great
There's
book.
also my husband was reading this article about winemaking, and he cut out this quote, and I don't know the quote exactly, but I had it on my desk for a while about how what makes great wine is stress. You have to stress the vines, and you have like rocky terrain and bad weather, and you deprive it of water,
love that.
and you get the best wine from all this stress. And he's like, that's your process.
That's awesome.
Well, and I
love
to me
that.
also
I'll send you the quote. I'll find it.
There's the and well, we're going to take one more question after I make this
point.
Stupid point, but I feel like again, it's one of the things Winnie and I talk about is crutches, addictions, and writing. And writing is another addiction. But because it's always like, am I doing it? Am I not doing it?
But it's a healthy addiction.
It's a healthier addiction. But I find sometimes when I'm writing, not just the fear, but literally this physical discomfort, like it's too much. And it's like a baby that gets overstimulated and you just want to calm down. And it starts feeling like I can't handle all the energy.
One of my writers also thinks that it's depressive, that it releases certain things in the brain that make you depressed. That's his theory. But.
Well, I do think that there is something to, you'll be doing it and it'll start to bring up, whether it's depression or whatever, it'll start to bring up unbidden emotion. And to me, that is part of the life that we're all living, that we learn very slowly, and in my case, really slowly, but we learn how to deal with the emotions that unbidden. It's not like it's not like when I'm purposely remembering something because I want to write about it. It's stuff that's coming up for me that I didn't know was going to overwhelm me. And it's so unconscious that all I know is I want to eat now. I want to eat now. It's so I'm not in touch with even the depth of the emotion. So it's like for me, I've needed to learn different ways that I can manage some of that depth of emotion.
The writers are alcoholics,
without eating or smoking, or I mean that's basically been my journey, so to speak. I mean, not to use the word journey in a sentence like that.
What do you do instead?
What?
What do you do instead now?
I meditate. I have prayers. I believe it or not, I do shop quite a bit. Yeah, and I mean it is important to, and I do let I do a lot of fuck off type of things. Like I just wander around, read books that seemingly have nothing to do with what I'm thinking about. I actually don't believe that they have nothing to do with what I'm thinking about.
I think they inform things a lot.
I always believe that the book I reach for and start to idly read when I'm in the process of supposedly avoiding what I'm supposed to be writing is a way to unleash myself so that I don't know. I do the dishes. I do get in the car, drive, hopefully someplace I really know well how to get to because I'll go into a daze. I'll go to a bookstore and go into a bookstore daze, which is a very valuable type of daze, I think.
I do the Amazon thing.
Mm-hmm.
I
Go on
shop,
Amazon.
yeah.
It's so easy.
Yeah.
One click, one click. Let's get, how about we'll do one last question. Did you have a question? We'll do one last question. Oh, two more questions. All right.
Yeah, we could do two more, right?
You, and then we will end with you as our youngest. It'll be like,
Well, you're
it'll be like, what is it, Passover or something?
Yeah.
I don't know how that's Passover, but you'll be the last one, and then you are welcome to stay for our ritual or not, Jenji, and we'll do our little
final
ritual.
night ritual that we always do, but you don't have
We
to
hand out
stay.
tarot cards. That's all. It doesn't take a long
My
time.
interest is piqued. I
Okay,
have
cool.
to see how it ends.
When you write a pilot and then it gets picked up, do you ever have an idea of that particular concept and characters, of how long that's going to go to play once it gets out there? And how do you keep that understanding and keep it going?
You say out loud to anyone who will listen, oh, it's going to go on forever. It's going to go on for years and years and years because that's what they want to hear. And personally, I don't want to set limits on it because who knows? Maybe we'll find something interesting and then it'll put more gas in the tank and we'll be able to keep going. Like I think last year really helped rejuvenate the series a lot. And I think at a certain point, like one of our writers, our resident artist this year said, I'm quitting and you should all fire yourselves because no one should be writing the same people for this long, and we're artists and we all have more in us than this and we have to do more, and give it over, and it's like, okay, but this doesn't happen that often. And I've been working a little longer than you have, and go give it over. Good luck. But
Those people are going to miss that show so much when it's over.
That wasn't Matt.
They are going to wish so much that they were still writing that show. But it's that human thing of always wanting to be somewhere where you're not.
Yeah.
Where somewhere else.
But I don't look ahead and saying this is a 5-year show or this is a 2-year show or this can last this long.
How could you know?
You don't know.
I mean, the whole nature of it is that you are not in charge of how long it lasts unless you live in London and you're working for the BBC and they hired you for 6 episodes or 12 episodes or,
Even then,
even
then
then
they come back for another 6.
Yeah, exactly. The whole nature of it is that that's not your call, actually. So it has to be something that you are willing to figure out a way, just keep spinning. And that's part of what's challenging about it.
Brennan. Yeah, Brennan.
I was just wondering a little bit more about, this is kind of going back now, but the nanny cam pink teddy bear thing. It really kind of ends up acting as a symbol for this whole big theme of trust, Nancy trusts I forget his name, the gay guy who says he won't sell to kids. And
Josh, yeah.
And then he ends up doing it. What else? The nanny cam itself, what's her name? I'm sorry.
Celia?
I'm forgetting the names. Yes, Celia doesn't trust her daughter with Nancy's son, and she's trying to foist it on Nancy. And I was just wondering a little bit about how much of that you intentionally put in there and what kind of inspired that and all that kind of stuff.
I mean, I think it's mostly all intentional. And then some sublime things happen where it really boosts the intention. But you want to create this balanced script where everything pays off, where you set them up and you knock them down, and hopefully you achieve that.
Well, the other thing that I wanted to say too is trust issues are such triggers everybody. When I say that, doesn't everybody think of some issue in their life? One of the things that Jenji does so brilliantly in the series is everything is strong emotions. We're greedy, we're scared, we're angry, we're horny. Everything, it's like really those juicy emotions. And she really takes advantage of the reality of the drug dealing. And at one point I thought it's like really Perils of Pauline. Every horrible thing that could happen happens. And so that's really, I don't know if this addressed what you were saying or not, but when you said trust, it just triggered me. And I think that that's one of the things that really is so great about the show is you can relate to it whether you're a drug dealer or not. Because it's these huge
Right.
operatic emotions that are in all of our lives,
Right.
but it's in this specific heightened world.
Also, I think, you're talking to a person who just admitted that she's written 17 pilots, that she's been writing professionally since she was 22. So, and before that, I'm sure the way you got to write professionally when you were 22 was you were always writing.
I used to enter, to make money, I used to enter writing contests.
You used to enter writing contests. So what starts to happen to us is we start to understand that we're going to, in other words, she's got a criminal. She's got Nancy. Well, what's the opposite of a criminal? It's a law enforcer. Now, if you want to look at it, now, I'm not even saying that she literally consciously says to herself, she doesn't even have to anymore because she's got the 17 pilots. She's busy doing this all the time. So on an unconscious level, possibly, or let's say a creative level, her unconscious is supplying the opposite for Nancy, which is this law enforcement mom, not an actual policeman, because you know what? That's kind of trite. That's actually kind of obvious and trite, although she probably could have made that work too, but it's obvious. But the mom isn't a real policeman, but she's policing her family. She's spying on them. She's a fucking CIA agent in her own house. And so that's the opposite of the pot dealing mom on some level. And we're always looking, all of us, whenever we're doing this shit, we're always looking for what's the opposite? What's the foil for this? In other words, you've made an incredible character. You can't have a character be incredible without that character. That's why we're so in love with. That's why Robin and I are like oohing and ahhing over Justin Kirk, who plays the crazy. He's not in the pilot, but who plays in 2 episodes later. This amazing character walks in, who's her the husband who died, his brother, and he's off the hook, like difficult and crazy, and sort of a walking disaster area, and he's there to make her life harder. I mean, he walks into her life, and right away everything's harder. We don't have a show or a story unless things are hard for her. If she's like really good at her job and there's no bump in the road, what happens?
But that's literally every episode is. You thought it was already hard. It just got harder.
And harder and harder. But that's where her artistry comes in.
But I also, to elaborate on what you were saying, I think you need to start with talent, but you also need to, it's a craft, and you need to learn your craft. And I spent a lot of years in the trenches, and
Right.
it's and you need to learn your craft so you can break it too. You have to know what icons you're smashing, and you need to get trained to a certain extent. And I think a lot of people come in and they're brilliant, but they don't know the form well enough to be breaking out of it.
Well, and then they lose their shows, and they bring somebody in to take it over from them, and the show, or they can't really realize what it is that they're trying to do.
Can I just ask quickly, when you're looking for a young writer, let's say you're in the market for really a young writer, which
Yeah.
I'm sure happens sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Someone you can bend to your will and mold in your in your
No,
vision.
I love it.
You love that, like
I love it.
right.
I love it.
So what kind of let's just describe for a second what qualities that young writer might have, or
Just raw talent on the page, the way of approaching a short story or a play or a movie that surprises me, that makes me laugh, that's beautifully written, that's different, that has a voice, a very unique and specific voice. I know a lot of people look for good mimicry, like I think that's the whole purpose of the spec script, just like look how well I can capture your voice. I won't read spec scripts of existing shows. I don't want it.
I hate them. I've never written a spec script in my entire career. Not
Yeah,
one.
I don't want to
I
know
found
how
that
well.
it didn't teach me anything about
No.
the writer.
I want to
because-
know what their voice is
Yeah,
and
I
how,
didn't know
what they can bring.
what they brought, so I felt like I didn't want to take a chance on somebody that I wasn't seeing that they could create something on their own, and
Yeah.
and have me get excited about something they made up.
I mean, I love great writing. I love great writing. It really excites me. So when I read something that I don't want to put down, that I'm engaged in, that I think is dazzling, I want that person using that power for good and using it for me.
That's a beautiful place to wrap up.
Yeah, that's
we want
beautiful.
Jenji. This is just incredible, and I love the show so much. And thank you so much.